So we have Chris Cabal and David Williams playing this round. Dave Williams on your right, former, well, he's still active pro, but
yeah, still active.
Yeah, still active, but not certainly as much as he used to be. Came in second place at the WSOP a couple years back, and has used some of those winnings towards beta dual lands and a bunch of foils that will be on display during this match.
And by some you mean most.
By most I mean all.
Yeah.
Playing Rug Delver, and on his left is Chris Cabal playing Affinity. This was the actually the deck that dispatched me in the one and only round that I played at Grand Prix Atlanta a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Affinity is an interesting little legacy deck. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, it is. You know, it's always like it's fun playing in a format where you get. It's not like you just get taken back into time, like to as far back as you can remember. You get teleported to like very specific points in your memory. It's like when someone goes turn one Vault of Wizards, you're like, I'm in 2004. It's just like you know,
this deck's stupid. I'm gonna die on turn 4.
Right. I remember what songs were popular. I remember, you know,
my 2004 days. Brief history lesson. That was when Affinity obviously came through. I was on a team in Ohio called the Get Fresh Crew, GFC.
I remember this.
Yes, I hope you do. Because we purposely had the worst team name imaginable, and we built a red-green control deck called the Fresh Maker to have the worst deck name ever in the history of deck names as well.
So it looks like Chris is taking a mulligan. I actually lost to Tim Aiden piling that
yes,
deck at
yes,
Grand
you
Prix,
did.
New Jersey.
Yes, you did.
So yeah, I'm right back.
That deck was, its goal was to beat Affinity and nothing else. So that is what I remember from the 2004 days.
All right, so Vault of Whispers, Signal Pest.
One of the cards that Affinity did not have back in the day.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say if Affinity would even have played that card back in 2004.
It's weird to me. It's so hard for me, having played in that era, to wrap my head around Arcbound Ravager not being good enough for the deck. But
yeah, and like Frogmite not being good. Or does he have Frogmite?
Yeah, he's got 4 frogs.
Okay. Like Frogmite not being like turn 1 Frogmite was like you wanted to pull your hair out.
Yeah.
And they played a turn 1 2/2.
So a Wasteland from Dave to try to set his development back. But usually Affinity is able to run pretty land light.
Yeah, it's not a deck that requires a lot of lands, and I know you have his deck list in front of you. How many lands is he even playing?
16 plus 3 opals plus 3 drums.
Sure, so they don't need a lot of land to operate. They can typically operate on 1. Hopefully it's an artifact land, but it doesn't need to be. So you need, as a Rug player or anyone, any deck, honestly, to ignore their lands for the most part and just get your game plan online. And then if they, they don't have a ton of lands, or they have a creature land like a Blink Moth or an Ink Moth Nexus, then you can wasteland that.
Yep. So Dave has just made a first turn play, more than twice as valuable as Chris Cabal's entire deck, with a turn 1 beta Tropical Island into a foil Ponder.
Yeah, and you guys would think that that is glare coming off of the Tropical Island, but that's just how expensive it is.
Yeah,
it's just blinging.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all. There's no camera issue at all.
Mox Opal.
That's likely to resolve. And as you guys will probably see throughout this game, Dave is already behind because of the turn 1 Laceland on the Vault of Whispers, and trying to mana screw an Affinity opponent is not going to work most times.
It's a tough sell. It's so attractive sometimes because there's so few lands in their deck.
Yes.
Where you're like, if I tag this, that could be their only land. Sweet. Often what ends up happening is they're just like, all right, Nexus, dump my hand next turn, go.
Yeah. I mean, back in the 2004 days, you had to control yourself not to oxidize their first land.
Right.
You had to save it for an actual threat, even though you just want to get them so bad.
Yeah.
Because they have so few mana sources.
Because it was such a dirty deck at the time. You're just like, all I want to do is I want to screw this dude.
You just want to beat
him.
him.
Lose with no cards in play.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
By any means necessary, you want to beat them. I remember there was a match as Dave fetches here, where my buddy is playing like top 8 of a PT.
There's a volcanic.
He has a bunch of oxidizers in his hand, and he's just like, I'm gonna destroy all of his lands. He's not gonna play anything, and the guy's just like, Darksteel Citadel. Oh my God.
Yep.
This is not a good plan anymore. And then he just got crushed.
Some pretty good Affinity stories, perhaps in between games here.
Sure.
There's a Tarmogoyf, and that is a artifact, land, sorcery. Or you're just going to dispatch.
And that's a dispatch. That dispatch is an instant, so that will count as well towards Tarmogoyf.
I guess it's going to need a daze.
Okay. That was not the time that you needed to cast
Well, not necessarily. He might want to activate his Nexus or do something else. The Goyf actually doesn't matter that much because it can't block anything.
That's true.
I mean, maybe that's not ideal, but
I guess, if he wants to get that in his hand.
This seems... Yeah, I'll draw out a Daze to do this. Sure.
Yeah, sure. That works better for him. It also sets Dave back a land drop as well. So
yeah, you can keep your Timer Goyf. We're just going to do this. That's $1 million.
Yeah, approximately. We've done the math.
Yeah. I can't count this high, but it's a lot.
And with 2 Signal Fest triggers on as well, I mean, we'll see what Dave can do. You know, you're not going to find a card. There's a potential to see a card like Fire and Ice, even though it's not in Dave's deck list, but you're not going to find a card like Archtrail or Bonfire the Damned or something like that to save him out of the situation. All of his removal is 1-for-1s.
He's just got some bolts, right?
Yeah, he's got some bolts as his removal. So there isn't much that he can actually do to get himself out of this situation.
Get a confirmation on what exactly happened to Dave's life total momentarily. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I count 11 points by my count last turn, but I'm not positive.
Including 2 Signal Fest triggers?
Yeah.
And then 1 for each one? So that each of the Signal Fest is a 1-power guy as well? Okay.
One, 2, I guess 6. All right, so I was off by 1. All right, we're gonna ponder.
So Dave's just going to ponder here. He's going to ideally just looking for as many lightning bolts as he can possibly find, but it's going to be a difficult game, for Dave to win.
Yep. I actually don't think he has. I mean, the only thing that he could really have is just 2 lightning bolts. That gets him some of the way there.
Yes. Yes. So it's still going to be a relatively difficult game for him to win. Affinity is rather unforgiving. I mean, when it does what it does, and anyone who's ever played against the deck knows exactly how good cranial plating is. Every creature becomes just a gigantic threat that is difficult to deal with.
So, see if they. All right, we're gonna attack because we can't block.
Yeah, not attacking.
Artifact, instant, land, sorcery. Probably, I guess 4 instant sorcery, land, artifact.
And the thing about and also, I mean, the damage that he's dealing is good. 2 mana 4/5 is obviously very good, but as we see, a Master of Ethereum to help pump up the rest of his guys.
Sure.
But Vault Scourge is going to has lifelink, excuse me. So the damage that he's dealing is relatively relevant. Also, Vault Scourge is like, excuse me, Master of Ethereum is like a 7/7 right now too. So Lightning Bolt is going to resolve. Yep.
Bang.
Did him real good.
So still 2 points coming in.
That's actually going to be 4 points because of Master.
Oh, right, yeah.
+1/+1.
And now there's a Master of Ethereum in play.
So it's going to put him down to 2. Master is going to be a 6/6. And plating is just going to be moved over to one of these Signal Pests. Yeah, it's going to take care of it. Looking at Dave's sideboard, and a lot of people, this will come as no surprise, don't really prepare for Affinity when they're preparing for a Legacy tournament. It's one of the fringe decks. It's not a deck that people really expect to play against. He doesn't have a ton of hate, but he does have 2 Ancient Grudges in his sideboard, which are going to be incredibly useful, of course.
Yeah, they're excellent.
Outside of that, there isn't much that he can do here. Sulfur Elemental can potentially trade with something, but he does not have a lot of help in his deck to be able to fight this deck.
No, I think you're just bringing in the 2 Grudges. On the other side of things, Cabal has a single copy of Perish, which I would expect him to bring in. And then he has 4 Spell Pierce, 3 Thoughtseize, which are, I would assume, mostly for combo matchups. But it's possible he wants him here as well if he's, you know. Like, Thoughtseize actually might be fine. I'm not a huge fan of Spell Pierce, except in the combo matchups, because, like, holding a blue is a huge cost for this deck.
Yes. Holding a blue is, pretty difficult. I don't hate Thoughtseize, but it's proactive instead of reactive, and I think you'd rather be proactive instead of reactive.
Right. So, both these players are 2-1. I actually got to bird Williams' one loss earlier in the tournament, which was to Michael Hetrick playing Esper Blade.
Sure.
Dave's draws were quite poor.
Sure, and Hetrick is pretty
master,
proficient. Yeah,
yeah.
pretty proficient with the Stoneblade deck as well. So
I played in the Affinity Block PT in Japan back in the day, and everyone on the Target CMU team played Affinity, but our list was just like an F-.
Okay.
It's like far and away the worst list of Affinity in the tournament, no questions asked.
Okay.
There was still so much of us playing it that like Ben S still top 8'd because he ran into enough of us along his way up to the top of the standings.
Okay.
And someone has to win. But I played, some red-green, Glissa, Arc Slogger, 12 Shatter deck.
Sure.
So I play, in round 1 you've always got the jitters, or I do at least, because you're like, hope we didn't miss anything. It's a new format, hope we didn't miss anything. I play against Jose B.
Okay, sure.
He just goes turn 1 Cloud Post. I'm like, I don't know what happened, but I know we missed something, and it's about to get destroyed. So I get Tooth and Nail in turn 4 or whatever that happens. Then I play against Affinity, lose game 1, go turn 1, Mountain, Electrostatic, Pull your guy.
Okay.
Turn 2, land, red-green Talisman, oxidize your guy. Turn 3, land, shatter on Isochron Scepter, shatter you go. Still easily lose this game.
Yeah, crushed.
Still crushed.
Crushed.
In the meantime, like all the Target CMU guys with our horrendous Affinity deck are just falling by the wayside. It's not a good tournament.
I just remember going through with my team in Ohio and testing for that entire tournament, or for just that entire block PTQ season, that there were 11 to 12 of us, and we just spent all this time testing red-green against every single deck, just putting all of this time in, documents and Excel spreadsheets of all of this stuff about how the games are going against Affinity, how we're doing against the non-Affinity decks, the mirror, all of that stuff. And we had 2 people qualify, and then some of our guys in New Jersey had a good performance. And it hits us like 3 years later that if we would have put all of that work towards Affinity,
right,
like maybe 8 of us would have qualified.
Yeah.
And it's just, what are we doing?
Yep. It's hard to fight that contrarian instinct sometimes. It's like, we're not going to be that guy.
Yeah,
we're going to figure it out.
I'm not casting Archon Ravager. I'm casting Arc Slogger and Wayfarer's Bubble.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, go play with somebody else. And so they probably did, and they probably won.
Oh, yeah.
So we see both players examining their opening hands at this point in time. We'll see if they can both keep 7. As you see, Dave, I enjoy Dave's t-shirt right now. Kelly Kapowski.
Yeah. For those of you too young to remember, one of the vixens on Saved by the Bell.
Absolutely. I think she is specializing in the USA Network right now. One of those miserable shows. White Noise, or that sounds like one of the names of the shows.
Dude, rent's not gonna pay itself,
That's if anyone knows that, it's me. Trust me.
Nimble Mongoose in for 1.
Trade? Any interest in a trade, Mr.
Probably
Waldscourge?
not.
I would hope not. Especially because we're looking at a cranial plating there. We're going to try to waste him. Now, this is a better spot to be wastelanding.
Yeah, you have some amount of pressure.
Yeah, wastelanding on the draw is much worse.
Now we got a goose, a second goose.
There's an Ancient Den. In for Uno. It's a simple pass back. It is. It's a very slow start.
Pretty good for Dave.
Yeah, it's a very slow start for Chris this game.
The gooses are unloosed for 2.
And then another wasteland. Okay. Showing the power of the wasteland. And he doesn't have very much other action, it looks like right now. No ponders and brainstorms, that sort of thing. But it doesn't mean he's doing poorly. He's actually still doing quite well.
Springleaf Drum resolves, which is really nice.
Another source of mana doesn't hurt Chris. He's going to respond to Springleaf Drum, sure.
Not sure exactly what's going on here.
Well, it looks like Dave's going to respond to Springleaf Drum so that Chris doesn't have the mana, or he may just... Okay, so he's just going to let it resolve and then take it. He just wanted to consider what he could do in response to that.
Dave can't wait to untap.
And for Deuce.
Another 2-ball.
Those geese need to get a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
That'll help. Misty Rainforest probably going to be followed up with a Tarmogoyf, it seems like to me.
Possibly playing right into a Parish here. I don't know if Chris has it. He only has one copy, but that would be a good time to have it.
One is better than none. His card, Matsopal is a good draw.
Yep. Let's see. This is the turn where you would expect him to have a big swing. Thought
casts. 2 new ones.
Dave is looking at a Force of Will in hand. I don't know if he has another blue card to go along with it, but
assuming that he does have another blue card to go along with it, he's going to want to save it for a cranial plating most of the time. But if that Parish is actually drawn and cast, he'll be able to take care of it.
Another thought cast. Dave's going to let that resolve.
I remember back in our 2004 days, that was the scariest card to see on the stack for me as a player.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, every time my opponent cast thought cast, I was ugh.
Another Vault Scourge. I assume we're going to probably send for 1 here.
Looks to be the case. Chris really needs to obviously unload his hand as quickly as he can. I think we see a dispatch in his hand that can take care of that Tarmogoyf.
I would imagine you want to cast it now. Well, he also has a Signal Pest in his hand, so I guess he's debating between those two.
Sure. I think you're going to want to get Signal Pest on the board, but it looks like he's going to elect to try to cast Dispatch. Maybe he'll trade a Vault Scourge for we'll attempt to trade a Vault Scourge for a Nimble Mongoose and then dispatch the Tarmogoyf.
So, curious to see. Okay, Dave's not going to make any efforts to get to Threshold before combat. It's so attractive for him here, if he could, that I have to assume he doesn't have any ways to actually get up to 7.
Sure. I'm just going to dispatch that. I think if given the opportunity, I would try to trade with that Nimble Mongoose, and that's going to be a Thought Scour.
Okay, he's going to respond with a Thought Scour. I believe he just revealed a Temporal Distortion.
Temporal Mastery.
Temporal Mastery.
Yeah, he does have 3 in his deck list. I'm a little bit surprised that they're in after sideboard, but he also doesn't have a ton of cards to sideboard out.
So this is a big hit right now.
And yeah, that Daze, I think that's going to put his geese up to 7, I believe. Or, excuse me, up to Threshold.
And the Goyf is hitting for, we have instant, land, sorcery, artifact.
Creature, because he milled a Nimble Mongoose as well, so.
I believe he just played a Delver. He's got...
Lightning Bolt would kill Chris, but it's pretty clear that Dave does not have that.
He does
have Parish.
All right, he's got a Force of Will for the Parish.
Okay.
That would be just the dirtiest way to take out Dave out of this game after all of his beta dual lands and full everything to actually just whiteboard 6th edition Parish him out of this. You gotta do him a little bit better than that.
At least go find a Tempest one, Chris. Come on.
It's a disservice.
But that will probably wrap this particular game up.
Yeah, I had to imagine.
I would assume. Chris is going to go through the motions here, but blocking for him isn't very good, and attacking isn't very good either. Yeah. Dave's guys are too large. We're going to check for or it's another no Mongoose, not a Delver. But yeah, easy turn for Dave. Untap attack.
We just got a little prompt here.
That's all you, man.
On Twitter yesterday, apparently Dave Williams declared that white-bordered Blood Moons should not shut off black-bordered dual lands. Could not agree more.
Yep.
Also, it was funny. He has a Red Blast in his sideboard. I was watching him. I was burning his match as we're in the process of wrapping this one up. And he was debating, like, he has Spell Pierce and Lightning Bolt and Red Blast, and he's just like on the fence about which one it is that he actually wants. And he has like a 1/4 edition Red Blast in his sideboard. Okay. And he looks at it and he looks at me and he's like, "This is too ugly. I can't even play with it," and just sides it out.
Yep.
Probably would have been better than the Spell Pierces in the games or whatever. But,
likely to be better, yes.
But couldn't bring himself to cast a 4th. Yeah.
He's a man of principle.
Yeah.
And I can respect that.
Yeah.
So
I offered to give him my summer one out of the room. It would make him feel better, but No takers.
No dice.
No, no dice.
So as these players go to game 3, I think this is this matchup is very important depending on who is on the play, who's on the draw.
Yeah, of course.
As most legacy games are. But for Chris, he needs to just be able to unload his hand as quickly as he can and not get set back as badly as he did by Wastelands.
Yeah, certainly Wasteland and Days are obviously significantly more powerful on the play than on the draw.
Yes.
So that is a big deal. I don't think really too much is going to change out of their boards as they go into the third game here. I suppose being on the play theoretically makes Spell Pierce and Thoughtseize more attractive for Chris, but I still don't think it's worth diluting your deck. I feel like with Affinity is one of those decks, actually even more than other tribal decks, and I sort of consider Affinity to be a tribal deck. It's the Artifact Tribe. It pays you off for having a bunch of artifacts, just like Goblins or Merfolk do. You can't dilute your deck because more than almost any other tribal deck, the quality of your cards are predicated on having like a raw count of artifacts in play. So I don't like beatdown decks sideboarding a bunch of cards to begin with because you're often diluting your pressure. And then on top of that, I especially don't like it in Affinity because you're just cutting artifacts to make room for these cards.
Sure, and I couldn't agree with you more. If the cards that you are going to sideboard in an aggressive deck have to be just extremely high impact cards that are going to get the job done against the specific matches that you are boarding them in against. And while I don't think that Thoughtseize or Spell Pierce are bad cards, they're not high impact enough to dilute your deck to stop you from casting a card like Frogmite on turn 1 or what have you.
Right. Although the match that I lost against Affinity at the Grand Prix, I was playing Blue-Red Delver, and my opponent brought in Thoughtseize and Spell Pierce against me, and those cards ruined me in our games.
Sure, I could see them being good against that particular deck.
Right, because I guess so much of the quality of Dave's cards in this matchup are the green cards.
Yeah,
which I didn't have access to.
So a card like Perish, of course, if it would have resolved that game, would have been huge.
Yeah.
But like that's the kind of high impact card you're talking about. Destroy all green creatures. It's very simple in what it's looking to accomplish, but it's also very, very good at its job.
Yeah. All right. Looks like we have a mulligan and
we have a man in the tank.
Yep.
Should I keep these beta lands?
Yeah.
Should I shuffle them back into my deck rather carefully so they not lose their value?
Well, I believe there's at least some double sleeving going on there.
All right.
You better hope.
I would hope, yes.
They're both going to go back. So, I really like Dave still showing up to these tournaments. A lot of the players from that era, the 2002, 2003, 2004 era, a lot of them made it big. Like certainly during the poker boom, or just doing work in analytics, or market/hedge fund sort of stuff. Magic paid okay at the time, but there was a lot more lucrative endeavors to do. So a lot of the guys who were attracted to Magic as a game to make money moved on to different sorts of games where you can make money.
Sure.
Whether playing poker or playing the stock market or whatever.
Sure.
And over time, a couple of them, particularly Dave and Ephro, have come back, and it's good to see them still have the passion and enjoyment for the game, that it wasn't just like a money-making endeavor the whole time.
No, I agree. What's kind of cool about Dave versus some of the other players, and if most of you guys probably know who Dave Williams is, he got second to the World Series of Poker. He's a poker pro. He's on Poker After Dark, all of these shows. Yeah. For lack of a better term, he is a celebrity. And to see him come back and just play in these tournaments just because he enjoys playing the game, it's just a good thing for our game and shows how popular our game is.
Yeah, it was awesome. I was watching him just at Gen Con a couple of years ago in like the back corner of some dark room playing some game against Vintage against some
guy. Yeah, but I was at that same Gen Con. I was walking around the room or whatever, waiting for a tournament. I just saw him playing Vintage. And I'm like, what the heck are you doing here? He's like, dude, I love the game. I'm like, that's awesome to me.
So both players on 6 cards going in the third game here. Looks like lands and spells in Chris's hand, and Dave seems content with his 6 as well.
All right, we'll see what they can do.
Looks like there's a lot of white cards in Chris's hand. I don't see a white source of mana.
And there's a Wasteland. I guess this is one of the few times that you can actually play Wasteland without a ton of fear, only because Signal Pest can't actually do any damage. There's no real clock on him. I still don't love Wasteland on the draw, but
Yep. If he has nothing to do on his first turn, it basically, if Dave has nothing to do on his first turn anyway, it basically gives him another draw step to find something to do on the first turn.
sure.
There's a Stoneforge Mystic. I assume this is only to find Cranial Plating. Yep.
I see that Dave has a Spell Pierce in his hand. That's an interesting card to have in that deck.
He's going to Thought Scour himself. I assume he's willing to daze if he finds one off of this Thought Scour.
Yeah, I would assume as much.
And we are tanking.
Deep in the tank.
Yep. And there does appear to be a Spell Pierce in Chris Cabal's hand.
Yeah, which I think is going to be rather important. I was going to bring up that Thought Scour is interesting because it's able to mill Ancient Grudge, so that you're still going to get 1/2 of that card. And that's exactly what happened off that Thought Scour. I know you guys can't see it on screen, but Dave actually milled an Ancient Grudge when he cast that Thought Scour, so that's something more that Chris has to think about now.
Yep. Dave's going to need a second land here before we can even make that a thing, though.
No second.
Oh, no, never mind. Sorry.
Okay, I see a Misty. I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's a tidbit dicey.
There's a Goose.
Goose is loose.
So Dave is pretty content to sit on his Grudge up. Although, unbeknownst to him, Chris can actually potentially Spell Pierce the Grudge flashback.
Yes.
I assume Dave ideally wants to wait until a spot where Cabal is actually going to try to move his Cranial Plating onto a guy and actually make an attack. So Dave might be in a holding pattern for a little bit. Now are we going to hit for 2?
I mean, he's just going to go ahead and pass back. He's stuck on lands right now. We know he has a Spell Pierce and a Cranial Plating that he can put into play with Stoneforge Mystic. But he also, I'm sure he has some other decisions he can make as well, but he is stuck on land at this point. Which is good for Dave. He needed a turn of just freedom, honestly.
Yes. Yeah.
No more pressure added to the board, anything of that nature.
So Dave with 2 fetch lands and a tropical island. He's going to probably don't want to attack there, I would assume.
I mean, there are 3 cards in his graveyard. 2 fetch lands is going to make it 5. Interesting attack.
All right. This is an awesome call. If
Brainstorm. Brainstorm will theoretically make it 6. Oh boy.
Whoa, hold up.
Spell Pierce is now a rather. He's giving it away now.
The jig is up.
Yeah. By reaching for that island, he's really giving it away.
And this is actually something I'm really dubious of, because presumably Dave's making this play because he feels like he can get 2 threshold inside of combat. There's a pretty big danger here that if you pierce here, he just pays. His turn's still good because he gets your Stoneforge Mystic, and now you haven't even gotten to put your Cranial Plating into play.
Yes. Yeah. So the pierce didn't really accomplish anything.
Right.
And you're losing the guy who's going to put your thing in. It's going to put your Cranial Plating into play for free.
You know. He's going to pierce back. Okay.
Okay, so that's just going to put another card in his bin. And then he'll be able to brainstorm. He'll be able to brainstorm and then put the cards away with Polluted Delta. So I actually I like the pierce back there.
Yeah.
All while making Nimble Mongoose into a large enough creature to take down the Stoneforge Mystic. So this turn seems like it's gone very well for Dave. Yep. And keep in mind that he also does have the Grudge in his graveyard that he can flash back if that Polluted Delta opts to get a Tropical Island. So things look to be going heavily in his favor at this point in time. And from what I can see in his hand, it looks as though he has a Ancient Grudge in his hand as well.
Yep. That's all you can really ask for. A bunch of kill spells, a good clock, and Cabal not really up to much of anything. He needs an Edge champion. That's the card he really needs here.
Edge champion would be good. He also just needs to really slow down and think his turns through, because before he casts a Cranial Plating, he tapped all 3 of his mana, which is like a rather dead giveaway that he has Massive Ethereum in his hand as well. And he just needs to kind of take a step back and just plan out what he wants to accomplish on each of these turns. Because, I mean, Cranial Plating coming to play just doesn't matter for the most part, because we know that Dave has an Ancient Grudge. I guess you may want to just get that part of the game over with, but...
Yeah. Alright, so we're going to get rid of that plating.
You know, there was a point where Chris's Spell Pierce would have been very good, and I just think that he used it incorrectly.
Yeah. I think you're just fine taking that hit. Dave does whatever he does with his turn. You Stoneforge out your Cranial Plating. You go and tap with Pierce up. Seems like a much better progression.
Yeah.
Alright, we've drawn a Cranial Plating.
2.
We're going to move, and we're going to equip.
This is probably going to be that Grudge that I thought I saw.
There's a second copy of Ancient Grudge. So, Chris is in a ton of trouble now.
Sure would have been nice if we had that card in 2004. Tell you what.
I don't know if it would have been enough.
That's crazy.
I never felt like I was at a shortage of artifact removal spells.
But just 2 in 1 card,
Sure.
I think, is a difference. There was certainly no shortage, but it was just 1 card for all of them. Let's see, 3 mana. This is probably the Massive Ethereum that I thought he had. Yep. And that's just going to eat.
Just another Grudge victim.
Yeah, just another victim of the Grudge. If Dave wants to kill that, then he will. We see a Dispatch.
In response to the Grudge here, that's going to get a Daze. Jeez. Every turn has gone about as badly as possible for Cabal here.
I'm inclined to agree with you. It's interesting because Dave doesn't have a ton of hate for this matchup. He only has 2 Ancient Grudges, which he drew.
Yeah, if you draw them, it counts.
Yeah, and there's looks to be an Oracle.
That's the Etched Oracle.
Okay. That's a card that can get him out of this jam, but Dave is looking at 2 copies of Force of Will in his hand, or at least Force of Will and a blue card, so he can counter this if he'd like to. Just going to get in for 3.
I'm going to have a Bolt here to finish it off, or...
Ding, ding, ding. That's game. David Williams
wins 2 games to 1 over Affinity. He drew some Grudges.
You know, that's not a card that you really see a ton of in Legacy, but that's always been the problem with artifact-based decks and Affinity in general. They really can't overcome the power of Ancient Grudge. I think walking into a tournament like this, if you're Chris, you don't expect to play against Ancient Grudge very much, so maybe unfortunate on his end. But Affinity also doesn't have the best of combo matchups either, so... Yeah.